According to this document, by 2050, half of humanity will be nearsighted, and it's more serious than you think. What you're looking at right now is what I see without eyeglasses. I know I don't wear eyeglasses for videos, but I do have eyeglasses, but I remove them each time I need to make a video. I can read my notes, but not my teleprompter. It's simple. Beyond 50 centimeters, I see blurry. Right now, I can hardly distinguish that what I'm looking at is text, and the only reason why I see a bit is because it's on my computer, which is very close to me. I see white blotches at most. If you have good vision, this might seem crazy to you, but my situation is nothing exceptional. On the contrary, it's really commonplace. Today, more than 2 billion people is nearsighted. 3 out of 10, that's really a lot. But I have proof here that this number is exploding. This meta-analysis in particular compiled 145 studies with more than 2 million participants, and its estimate is that by 2050, 49.8% of the world's population will be nearsighted. 5 billion people we are talking about. The inability to see far is spreading at such a speed that half of humanity will soon see blurry. But that's not the most alarming part. What the study also says is that out of these 5 billion people, 1 billion could develop high myopia. They won't see this, but that. Now, it's not just about having to wear glasses. High myopia can cause serious damage to eye tissues that deteriorate over time. If it goes too far, we are not talking about seeing blurry anymore. You risk losing your sight. Humanity is experiencing a vision crisis because of something in our environment. The good news is that we know exactly what it is. The bad news is that we are absolutely not ready to give it up. Okay. To understand the epidemic, we need to look at where it started, in East Asia. There, the proportion of nearsighted people is mind-blowing. In Japan, one study estimates that before the end of their schooling, 94.9% of students are nearsighted. And we observe similar trends elsewhere. In fact, 80 to 90% of South Korean, Singaporean, Chinese, and Japanese adolescents and young adults are affected by myopia. 8 to 9 people out of 10. Almost the entire new generation of these countries has a visual impairment, and this explosion can't be explained by genetics. Now, there's a genetic predisposition in the development of myopia. A child who has one nearsighted parent has higher risk of being nearsighted. I, for example, I am nearsighted because my father is, and even more so if both parents are. But in just 2 generations, China, Korea, and Japan went from a generation that saw very well to a generation where almost everyone needs glasses. The genes of this generation couldn't have mutated that fast. Never in human history has a visual condition reached such universality in so little time. It can't be explained by genetic mutations. What probably happened is that these genetic predispositions already existed but remained dormant, and something awakened them. There is one element that supports this thesis. The proportion of nearsighted people isn't an ethnic phenomenon, but a geographic one. This meta-analysis found that in East Asia, city children have 2.6 times more risk of becoming nearsighted than rural children. There's something in the urban environment that's a threat to vision. So the problem isn't only genetic, it comes from the interaction between the genes and the environment. Genes determines who could become nearsighted, but it's their environment that decides how many will become so, how quickly, and especially how far their vision will degrade. But then, what's damaging eyes to this extent? I know what you're thinking, because that's what brought me to this topic. But it's not screens. It can't be screens, because the problem is older than them. The progression of myopia in Japan started before the digital era. There is something else, and we know what it is. It's war, or at least what came after. After World War II, several Asian countries bet on an extremely powerful weapon, education. But really, education pushed to an extreme. The strategy gave spectacular results. The economy exploded, poverty collapsed. Japan became a world leader in automotive and electronics. South Korea became one of the world's greatest exporting powers. Encouraged by this success, these countries intensified academic pressure even further. Today, a Korean or Chinese student often spend more than 10 hours a day studying between school, homework, and evening classes. And guess what they do on weekends? Yes, private tutoring. Now, believe it or not, the longer you study, the more likely you are to become nearsighted. Randomization studies have proven that each year spent in school advances myopia by an average of negative 0.27 diopters. Concretely, that means that a university graduate will lose an average of 1 diopter. To really understand what that represents, this is normal vision, and this is what a person with minus 1 diopter sees. It's enough to transform someone who saw perfectly into someone who needs glasses to drive. In studying, there are 2 things that damages eyes. The first is lack of natural light. When the retina receives enough daylight, it releases dopamine, an essential molecule capable of preventing children's eyes from growing too fast. Recent studies shows that children who spend a lot of time outdoors have up to 3 times less risk of becoming nearsighted than those who stay indoors. The second culprit is near vision stress. When your eyes are strained up close to read a book, for example, the internal muscle responsible for focusing work constantly, which causes stress on the muscles responsible for visual accommodations. This permanent muscle fatigue greatly encourages excessive eye growth, which accentuates myopia. That's why young Asians who study intensively are more affected. They spend their day indoors staring at book up close. Add to that urban environment saturated with buildings where the visual horizon is limited, plus a slightly more marked genetic predisposition, and you get the perfect cocktail for a record explosion of visual impairment. But what Asia is experiencing today is just a preview of what awaits us. It went from 25% in 2000 to nearly 50% today in just one generation. Even Africa, long spared, is seeing pockets of myopia appear in major cities. It's a global phenomenon to the point that the WHO considers myopia as a major public health issue. The problem is we may not be ready to do what is necessary. I said screens don't cause myopia. That's true. A review of scientific publications conducted in 2020 didn't establish a clear link, and a meta-analysis concluded that screen time wasn't statistically associated with myopia risk. So there is no consensus that digital screens directly damages your eyes, but their indirect influence is obvious. Screens have radically transformed our lifestyle. The time we can spend looking at a screen has no limit, because it's through them that we work, communicate, organize ourselves, entertain ourselves. So today's children spend much less time outdoors than their grandparents, and they strain their vision more than ever, and the numbers are very worrying. We are seeing vision deterioration in younger and younger children. In China, between 2015 and 2020, myopia doubled among 7 years old children and tripled among 6 years old children. Tripled in just 5 years. It's an absolute tragedy, because the earlier myopia appears, the more time it has to worsen. A child whose myopia begins before the age of 10 has a high chance of exceeding the high myopia threshold as an adult. A child who becomes nearsighted at 6 can reach it around the age of 11. High myopia isn't just about thick glasses. There is a risk of developing irreversible retinal pathologies. Okay. Myopia is an optical defect. When you open your eyes, light passes through 2 natural lenses in your eyes, the cornea and the lens. These lenses focuses light exactly at your retina, which sends the image to the brain. But in a nearsighted person, light rays crosses before reaching the retina, either because their eye is too long or because the cornea or lens are too curved. In both cases, light coming from far away crosses before the retina, so the image sent to the brain is blurry. It's as if your eyes systematically focused too early. Glasses correct this problem thanks to concave lenses that slightly modify the trajectory of light rays so they land right on the retina. So myopia is a structural deformation of the eye. In a very nearsighted person, it can be up to 4 to 6 millimeters longer than a normal eye. That might seem insignificant, but on the scale of an eye, it's colossal. This permanent elongation exert constant tensions on internal tissues, making them more fragile and more susceptible to tears, even retinal detachment. In some cases, this stretching even damages the nerve fibers connecting the eye to the brain. That's what we call optic nerve atrophy. It causes progressive vision loss, alter color perceptions, reduce visual field, and in more serious cases, it's rarer, but you can end up blind. I have mild myopia and I already feel like I see nothing, so I can't even imagine. But I know someone very well who knows perfectly what that's like. My father suffers from a genetic disease so rare that it doesn't have a name. His disease is not due to myopia, but he lives with optic nerve atrophy. Making such a distant projection is never an exact science, but in 2050, 1 billion people suffered from high myopia, and 1/3 of them risk an optic nerve atrophy. And there is no treatment. What's lost is lost forever. It's not only an individual tragedy, but it will also have consequences for the society. In 2024, global productivity loss linked to uncorrected visual disorders, mainly myopia, is estimated at $268 billion for China alone. This figure reaches $16 billion per year because millions of working-age adults can't do their jobs properly. But the consequences go far beyond the economy. In South Korea or Singapore, the army struggle to recruit young people who see naturally well, forcing it to adapt their selection criteria or finance operations. On 2050, 1 person on 2 needs glasses for driving. That will involve logistical, medical, and economic challenges. The myopia epidemic isn't just about individuals. It's a collective, global challenge, and we need to act now. To slow the crisis, there are concrete solutions, already proven in several countries. The first one consists of lightening academic pressure when it's excessive. Allowing more time for outdoors activities will better balance academic performance and visual protection. China has already started to limit the amount of homework, and in Taiwan, studies have shown that adding 2 hours of daily outdoor activity could reduce myopia incidence among children by up to 50%. Natural light is not an absolute guarantee. It's probably the most immediate and effective preventive measure available to public authorities. Parents obviously have a major role. Limit children's screen time, especially before the age of 5. A child shouldn't exceed 1 hour of screen time per day. It's crucial to identify at-risk children very early, especially those whose parents are nearsighted or whose eye length is already abnormal. For them, there are medical treatments that can slow myopia progression by half. And in daily life for all of us, every 20 minutes of screen time, look at something 6 meters away for at least 20 seconds. It helps relieve eye and prevents their deterioration. Personally, I bought an app that automates this reflex for me. But above all, we need to warn people that if we do nothing, myopia will become within a few decades the main preventable cause of irreversible vision loss. We are condemning a generation to blindness, and it's a choice. Thanks everyone. This was touching. Ciao.